please. Okay.
There is no sound, Ms. Firdaus.
No sound. Okay.
Is one of the best ways to keep students motivated.
Is it? Can you hear it now?
Yeah.
Another common instructional method used in language learning classrooms is TBL, or task-based learning. In essence, TBL teachers give students a task, which students must complete using whatever English they happen to know that will help them complete the task. TBL processes can occur in many ways, but there's a very basic outline of the model here. It typically follows pre-task activities, such as presenting what the students will do, task activities, so the students can begin to perform the task, and then review and presentation of what the students did. In task-based learning, the teacher might introduce vocabulary or sentence structures that students will likely need to complete the task, but the emphasis in a TBL class is on completing the task, not necessarily on specific vocabulary learning. Here are some examples. The teacher may begin class by explaining to the students that they need to prepare a list of school supplies and a budget showing how much money is needed to obtain the supplies. The teacher may show an example of the final product the students need to present at the end of class and how they will present it. The teacher may also explain the ways students will acquire the information they need to complete the task. While the students work on the task, the teacher may check on progress and offer language or other guidance that will help them complete the task. The students will likely use much auxiliary language besides the vocabulary one expects to hear when discussing the topic. ABC time lessons are not designed fully around the TBL model. Instead, ABC time lessons typically present specific vocabulary and structured practice following the PPP and ESA models, which is especially beneficial for younger learners. However, often during the production stage for older learners, students are presented with tasks that they complete individually or with team members. They use new language they have recently learned and any language they know to help them complete and present the task. Here's an example in a Level 9 lesson wherein students are asked to complete the task of creating a personal schedule. However, the teacher introduces a target sentence. I start to do such and such at such and such time and end at such and such. When presenting their schedules, students are expected to use the target sentence. However, teachers can add extension questions onto the discussion about the task and encourage students to produce both the target language and additional language they may know to explain or present more of their own thoughts. This encourages students to engage in more natural back and forth conversation about topics. So notice first the students share the information using the target sentence, and then auxiliary questions are asked, such as, how long do you play basketball? Or what books do you read? Again, this encourages conversation in a natural way. Well, this ends our second video in the series on methodology that is used in the preparation of ABC time curriculum. Once again, you're encouraged to research the methods discussed. Here are some links that may be.
Okay. So from your point of view, which one is more effective, the PPP or the task-based learning approach? Which one is more learner-centered and saves the time of the teacher and the students? Which one? Are you still there? Which one is more effective, the PPP or the task-based learning approach?
think they have different goals and different.
Yeah, sure, Noha. Yes. Okay. So, but from your point of view, Noha, or as a teacher, which one do you like most, or which one do you prefer with which levels?
The task-based is much more complicated, so I don't think it's suitable for beginner levels.
Maybe.
But the TTT is good as a starter of the lesson. Even if I want to use the task-based learner, I have some objectives and I need to know the background knowledge of the students. So starting with the TTT would be a good idea before going on.
Yeah, okay, I agree with you. So it depends on the level of the students. Either are they young learners or adults. This is a point. The other point is the level of the students. Are they lower level students or higher levels? Are they slow learners or fast finishers? So it depends. All the time, we make sure that the teacher is the real manager and the real mentor of his class and his students. So you choose the suitable approach according to the student themselves. And this is our target, to practice the language. So which approach, which suits your students according to their levels, according to their accuracy and fluency, according to the point you want to improve. So it depends on the teacher. The teacher is the only one who can decide which approach to use. This is a point. The other point that is we can use more than one approach in one class and in one lesson. Also, it depends on the target language and what do we want our learners to produce, of course. So thank you, Noha, so much, and I totally agree with you. Okay, so can you remember how many approaches have we learned till now? And of course, each one of them has some cons and pros, and we can improve them in a way or another according to the levels of also of our students. Okay, so how many approaches have we learned till now? Can you remember? The previous sessions we talked about the audiolingual approach, the direct or the natural approach, the communicative learning approach, and of course the grammar translation method. And we talked about two other approaches, which were the inductive and deductive approaches. And I think all of them are related together in a point or another. And today we talked about the PPP and what does PPP stand for? As we have mentioned before, presentation, practice, production. And after that, we talked about the TBL, and TBL stands for what? Task-based learning approach. Yes, of course. So we have to move to other approaches to finish. Okay. And we have, of course, talked about the stages. So let's see now what are the pros and cons of the TBL model. TBL model has described as PPP on its head. So it's the same. At the beginning, the teacher has some presentation to the task. There are three main stages, but the language focus comes at the end here. The main focus is on the task cycle, task planning, reporting, rather than the target language. So the main disadvantage of this approach is it doesn't focus on the language itself. It focuses on doing the task, on doing something. So here we are not trying to teach our learners some kind of grammar or some kind of vocabulary, but the main focus is on the task. Maybe, yeah, the practice the language, but the most important is the task. So what is good about TBL? Let's see some advantages. Here, it takes a long time. Of course, this is one of the pros also. It takes a long time and learners not have enough language knowledge. The learners here take longer time to practice the language or to know the focus or the main language. Then it draws on learners' knowledge and language uses authentic language and is a bottom-up approach. So as Noah has mentioned, it needs higher level students who are familiar with the language, so it cannot work with lower level students. That's right, Noah, okay? So here, what's good? It draws learners' knowledge. Maybe it depends on some students who are brilliant or excellent, who can answer the questions or interact with the teacher, but the lower level ones are still passive and they cannot share or participate. And here are TBL. Here are some types of TBL activities like brainstorming, ordering and classifying, maybe problem solving, but sharing personal experience. So still, it depends on the brilliant students rather than the lower level ones, okay? So let's move to the third approach today, which is the lexical approach, okay? And lexical here, we have some kind of affixed phrase, collocation, lexical unit, okay? These are the parts of the lexical approach. What do we mean by affixed phrase? Do you know what do we mean by affixed phrase? What do we mean by fixed phrase?
Expressions.
Yeah, maybe expressions or words that come together, like early in the morning, late at night, for example. Fixed phrase, words that come together and we are familiar with them. We wake up early in the morning, we go to bed late at night, for example. So this is called a fixed phrase. What about collocation? What about collocation?
Words that go together, make a question, make a mistake.
Yeah,
Words.
maybe they are a verb and a noun. Maybe they are nouns and nouns. Maybe they are adjectives and adjectives, and so on. Okay.
Yeah.
What about a lexical unit? What about a lexical unit? Some familiar questions like how are you, what's your name, and so on. So let's see them. Here are a fixed phrase, something like cold as ice, early in the morning, late at night, go to bed, and so on. Collocation, like make a mistake, do the homework, do a task, make a problem, and so on. Lexical unit, a whole complete unit, which we cannot separate it. It will have no sense if we separate each word alone. Like how are you? This is a lexical unit. If we say how only or are only or you only, it doesn't give sense. Okay. So here, what is the meaning of take? Here,
Have.
you can find, yeah. The three stages of this approach is experiment, hypotheses, and observe. How? Let's see.
Observe, hypothesize,
Yes.
experiment.
The first is observe, yes, hypothesize, and experiment. Here, remember, learners can be encouraged to notice or observe language that is relevant to them or can be more explicit. So they observe the language first, where the teacher highlights specific chunks to be learned. The teacher gives them some chunks at the beginning, and they have to observe which comes with, okay? In the second stage, learners then work out the function of the language chunks from the context, so they hypothesize. Finally, the teacher arranges a controlled or freer activity where learners practice the language. The activities can range from matching and gap fills to role plays and writing. This stage provides the experiments with the language. So they here in this approach, they learn some fixed information, like what we have mentioned before. Okay, like here, collocations, lexical units, and fixed phrases. They learn them as the teacher gives them the observe and the hypothesize, and of course at the end they experiment. They try to fill in the gaps or choose the right words or the correct answers. Okay, so here I'm going to skip this task. Okay. Okay, what activities do you use in the experiment stage? So we have some stages. We have the observation stage, we have the hypothesis stage, and experiment stage. What activities as a teacher do you use in experiment stage in this lexical approach? Can you tell me? What activities can we use with this approach? With collocations, fixed phrases? What activities or exercises can we use with this approach? We have just mentioned before, earlier. Okay, what exercises can we give our learners in this approach?
Listening to records.
Maybe listening to a record, okay, but after listening to a record, we can ask them to complete or fill in the gaps or choose the correct answer. For example, we do make read a mistake, for example. So they choose we make a mistake. Okay, so here is some activities. Okay, role play, summarize benefits and drawbacks. Here are all the approaches. Okay, and here are the benefits and the drawbacks or disadvantages. Here is a summary. If we look here at this table, PPP is a deductive approach. It is of course, a teacher-centered. The whole task depends on the teacher. It's easy to plan and deliver, of course. It's easy for the teacher to plan and good for low-level learners. The disadvantages is it's a teacher-led approach, assumes the learners and ready to learn, repetitive, and of course, it's boring for the students, especially the brilliant ones, because they can expect what the teacher is going to do. The second one, TBL, it's inductive. It's more learner-centered because the students are doing the whole task. It draws on learners' knowledge and language, uses authentic language bottom-up. And as Noha mentioned, of course, it needs a higher level students. So this is a disadvantage. It needs higher level students. It needs brilliant students who can practice the language. Of course, it takes a long time because when students do a task, they take a long time. Learners may not have enough language knowledge. Maybe here learners do not learn everything because they depend on the brilliant ones to help them. So they do not learn or get enough knowledge, language knowledge, okay? TTT, what do we mean by TTT? Test, teach and test. So here it's inductive and deductive, both of them. It depends on the teacher. If he's depending on the learners or if he's doing the task. It's good for reviewing, of course, because it's a kind of assessment. It's good for reviewing languages and assessing what learners know. The disadvantage, it relies on the teacher preparing lots of materials they may not use. So here the teacher takes a lot of time to prepare for exams and correction, of course. Lexical approach is inductive also, because it depends on the authentic language, shows language in use. The students try to practice the language because they learn a lot of collocations, a lot of fixed phrases and meaningful sentences together. So it teaches the learners and learner-centered, but it's still, it needs a wide range of language, may make it difficult for learners. Also, it may need some higher level students, and it's limited use or idiomatic phrases. Still, it depends on some idiomatic or some phrases, but it doesn't teach all the language. And the last one is TPR. It's inductive because it associates action with memory and meaning. The students try to learn some action verbs and memorize them, and they practice the language. Learners experience the language. They do the language by themselves. But still, some learners may not enjoy TPR activities. When we try to encourage our learners to move or to sing or act, maybe some learners may not enjoy it or like it. مش عايز, ما بحبش. Also, limited for teaching abstract or complex notions. Not all the language can be taught through TPR, total physical response. Okay, so here are some opinions from different teachers about the different teaching approaches we have mentioned. I want you now to read the first one, and please tell me, do you agree with the teacher or not? Who can read the first one? Who can read number one?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
The PPP approach is old-fashioned and boring for learners.
Okay, do you agree with the teacher or not?
No, I don't
Why?
agree.
Why don't you agree?
I think the PPP approach is very helpful and beneficial for the learners. Especially the poor learners or the weak
Lower.
learners. Yes,
Yeah,
lower.
okay. Yeah, okay. Does any one of you have another different point of view? Or do you agree with her?
Agree with you.
Okay, so again, the magic word here also, again, once more, again, and all the time. is it depends on the level of the students. If they are higher level students or lower level students, if they are beginners or intermediate students, okay? What about the second teacher? What about the second one? Who can read it and tell me your point of view? What about the second one? Who can read it? Okay, I'm going to read it and tell me do you agree or not. Yes, okay.
I'm going to read Miss Firdaus.
Yes, okay, go ahead. Rihab, right?
No, Samia.
Samia, okay, yes, Miss Samia. Forgive me because I only hear voices. Okay, yes, Samia.
The lexical approach is confusing. There is no real framework to it.
Okay, do you agree with her or not?
I agree. I agree with
why?
this perspective. I think it depends on.
Yes.
I think it depends on some idioms.
Yeah.
Like get up early or and so on.
Yeah, so it doesn't teach all the language, only some chunks or some parts of the language, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay. So do you agree with Ms. Samia? Do you agree with Ms. Samia? Hello? I feel in the desert.
Yes.
Okay.
I agree with her.
Yes, okay. Yeah, okay. What about number 3? What about number 3? Who can read it and tell me, do you agree with her or not?
Yes.
Test is only.
Yes, okay, Mr. Ahmed, go ahead.
Teach test is
and the
only
males.
useful for identifying the needs of classes, not for teaching new language.
Yeah, okay. Do you agree with her or not?
No, I don't agree with her.
Why? Or give us your reasons.
It's a whole approach for identifying the language. Yes, it's not just for identifying the needs of the classes, but also for teaching the new language. I mean, it helps in teaching. It helps in teaching.
Yeah. So do you mean it's a comprehensive approach to useful for both identifying the needs of classes and also for teaching the new language, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And I agree with you. It's not only for identifying the needs of classes, of course, because it can be a pre-task or it can be at the end of the term, for example. So it can be for it's not only for useful or identifying the needs of classes, but also for teaching the new language. We can test if the students understand the new language or not, and we can of course make or give them feedback after that. That's right. Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. What about number 4? Adult learners would be embarrassed to take part in TPR activities. Do you agree with this, teacher?
No, I don't agree with that. But I think some adult learners may be embarrassed, but not all the adult learners may be embarrassed.
Yeah, okay. And I agree with you. Adult learners would be embarrassed to take part in TPR. Maybe some of them, but not all of them, because even us as teachers, even us as teachers, we are adults and grown-ups, and still we like, some of us, of course, not all of us, because we are all different. But some of us, even if we are adults or grown-up, like to do some TPR activities. Okay. What about number 5? Task-based learning is an overcomplicated way of teaching. It involves too much work for teachers. Do you agree with her? Does task-based learning involve much work for teachers?
No,
for learners.
Yeah, so we do not agree with her. It may take much work from the learners, but of course it takes less work from the teachers, so we do not agree with her. Okay, so here we come to the end of this session. Try something new. What will be, if you, after learning or getting some ideas about the different teaching approaches, starting from the ideolingual, the direct method, the teaching, the communicative learning approach, the grammar translation method, inductive approach, deductive approach. Today we have learned some information about the PPP,
Excuse me, Ms. Firdaus, excuse me, just a question.
Mr. Ahmed,
what should we do? What should we make for the action plan and for the reflection in a tag? What should we present? Is a question.
We have to choose some lessons from the set books from grade 1 to grade 6 as primary teachers. But because
any lesson from any grade or the lesson
from any grade, your trainees teach these grades. We have like before, like in year 2, we have to choose some lessons from the set books, from either from Time for English or from Connect or Connect Plus, and of course discuss the activities they can use the different approaches to apply on. And I'm so sorry today I don't have I didn't choose any lessons because the books are not available. Mr. Muhammad, may Allah recover him soon. He helps me and so he was ill today and I didn't have the books. So we have to choose some lessons from the set books and try to put them in the action plan and discuss them with our dear teachers, of course. Okay. But today, because I don't choose any lessons, I try to discuss it with you and with them.
So just choosing a lesson and teaching.
Choosing some lessons as models and discussing them in the action plans. Okay. Okay. So my dear colleagues and friends, after we have known about these approaches, okay, which one you find new, or which one you find something new in it and you want to apply with your classes, with our lessons and our curriculums? Did you find something new and you want to try to apply it with your learners? Are you still there?
Yes.
Okay, yes, Rahab, Sahar or Samia, tell me. Yes, okay, Sahar. Yes, okay, Sahar.
We can decide which approach we can follow according to a lot of items. The first one, which grade will we teach? How many members of students inside the classroom?
Great. The main target of the lesson itself, what does it focuses on? So if it has some action verbs, we can use TPR. If it has some acronym, some collocations or lexical phrases, we can use the lexical approach and so on. So it depends on, excellent, Sahar, and thank you so much. It depends on the level of the students, the number of the class itself, the lesson itself, and the target language, of course. So here we come to the end of our session. And how do you feel about, okay, here we come to the end of our session for today. Do you find something confusing? And inshallah, next time, I'll have some models of some lessons from our set books. And we are going to discuss how to apply the different approaches on them, inshallah. But before we go, or before we finish, which approach do you find more confusing and you want to know about how to use it or improve it in the future? Do you find something confusing and you want to modify, or you'll try to apply it, but you find that it's difficult to apply?
The lexical approach. I think for me.
Yeah, I totally agree with Noha that the lexical approach depends more on higher levels, because collocations and the fixed phrases are more familiar with higher level students, especially maybe in prep and secondary schools. So yeah, it's really a little bit more difficult with young learners, but they may learn it maybe spontaneously in using the direct or natural approach when they listen to some verbs and in context, and they repeat and they talk after the teacher, of course. Okay, is there anything still confusing, or is it okay for today?
It's okay.
Okay, so at the end of
Ms. Firdaus,
yes, okay, yes, okay, go ahead.
Honestly, Ms. Firdaus, the last three strategies or approaches, I have confused. I have confused with them. I think the best way or the best strategy to apply in my class. I think it depends, as you have mentioned before. I think it depends it depends on the level of my students, I think.
Okay, and I want to draw your attention, my dear colleagues and friends, to a very important point, which is here when we learn about some different teaching approaches, it's not the target to apply all the approaches we know about, but the target is how to apply the suitable approach which looks or seems simple and easy to apply with our learners. And the most important is that try to vary the approaches to achieve to achieve the target, which is practicing the language. It's not a matter of how much or how many approaches do you use with your learners. Maybe a very professional teacher uses maybe 2 or 3 approaches, but he's very professional and his students are very professional and perfect at speaking and communicating with each others. So it's not a matter of number. It's not a matter of idioms or terminology or definitions, it's not a matter of how many words or how many approaches the teacher is professional to tell and know, but the main target is how to teach the target language in a simple and easy way and use the suitable approach which fits your learners according to their level and their age. And maybe a professional teacher uses maybe 2 or 3, not a lot of them, but the most important, again, which I try to focus on or to stress on, is trying to vary and use different approaches, but which suits your students according to their levels, their age, and the number of your classes. And the teacher is the only one who can decide which approach to apply, and of course which one to practice the language. The main target is practicing the language and communication. If you use 1 or 2 approaches and you are excellent at encouraging your learners to practice the language, so you are an excellent one, and this is the real target of learning or knowing all these approaches. Okay, and by the way, most of us use all these approaches, but we don't know the names. Most of us uses all of these approaches. In some lessons, we use the lexical approach when we teach some collocations, maybe in grade 5 and 6. In some stages, we can use the TPR especially with young learners, when they learn some action verbs and they practice, they listen to the teacher, they learn the action verbs and act and role play. All of us use the PPP, which is presentation, practice, production, because our lesson plan depends on it. But the modern one is the backward design, which depends more on the learner, and we have talked about how to make the PPP more effective and depends more on the learners when we watch the video. So again, Sahar, it depends on you. You are the real manager of your lesson and your class, and you are the real decision maker to decide which approach to use. It's not a matter of lots of numbers of approaches, but it's a matter of how to communicate with your learners and be successful at encouraging them to practice the language. Okay? So I hope I cleared any confusion and try to solve or answer your question. Okay? So is it clear now, Sahar?
Yes.
Okay, so I hope so. So at the end of today's session, I know I tired you today. I'm so sorry. It's loaded with lots of definitions and approaches. I myself feel confused about some of them, but I think they are more clear for me now with you, with your help and with your support, of course. Thank you so much for attending today. Till we meet again. Thank you and goodbye. Do you have any questions before finishing? Okay. I'll send you all the materials on the groups, inshallah, and I can send you anything you need, inshallah. Okay. Thank you and goodbye. And have sweet dreams. Thank you. Okay. Goodbye.
Goodbye.